Today we're going to learn what that impeachment that's all over the news actually means. And we're going to look at the top 5 impeachment trials in the world. With the Capitol assault just a few days behind us, everyone's eyes are on President Donald Trump once more. This time he'd made the news because he's the first U.S. president in history to be impeached twice. But before we see the reasons behind the impeachment, let's really learn what it means. Impeachment is a way to remove government officers, and it usually happens when the official doesn't want to leave their job. In simple terms, it's like an indictment, something that a prosecutor needs to get before a trial. The U.S. Constitution has a wide range of offenses that can lead to impeachment, including treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Someone is impeached when a legislature votes to do that. Once impeached, the president's powers are suspended, and the Constitutional Court decides whether or not he should be removed from office. Another thing to keep in mind is impeachment by both houses of Congress is the only procedure that allows for a forcible removal of a sitting U.S. president outside of the 25th Amendment, which allows for removal of a president who's unable to discharge his official duties. With this out of the way, we now can move to see the top 5 most famous impeachment trials in history. And stay with us until the end, because number 5 is not only going to bring back memories to those that are a bit older among us, but it's a juicy topic that has the whole world gossiping about it. Of course, number 1 today could be no other than Donald Trump. As we said before, he's the first president in U.S. history to be impeached twice, and we're going to see both of the reasons straight away. Impeachment number 1, the reason was abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The 45th President of the United States was impeached for the first time by the House of Representatives on December 18, 2019. The Senate acquitted Trump of the charges on February 5, 2020, and Donald Trump remained in office of President of the United States. Let's break that down. The Democrats said that Trump had abused his power by pressuring the Ukraine to announce investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden and his son, while withholding almost $400 million in aid, and that he had obstructed Congress by refusing to release any documents related to his actions. Trump's impeachment came after a formal House inquiry alleged he had solicited foreign interference in the 2020 U.S. presidential election to help his re-election bid, and then obstructed the inquiry itself by telling his administration officials to ignore subpoenas for documents and testimony. The voting in the U.S. House of Representatives went as follows. Votes in favor, 230. Votes against, 197. For the abuse of power accusation. For obstruction of Congress accusation, the votes were in favor, 229, and against, 198. The voting in the Senate was 48 guilty and 52 not guilty for abuse of power, while for obstruction of Congress, 47 voted guilty and 53 not guilty. Impeachment number 2. The reason? Incitement of insurrection. Please keep in mind that since this is still undergoing while we're reading this, things may have escalated by the time you see the video. As of January 14, 2020, the House passed an article charging President Trump with incitement of insurrection for his role in last week's deadly Capitol attack. But it is likely he will stay in office and finish out his term, because it takes a Senate conviction to remove him, even after he's been impeached. It's been made clear this Senate trial won't start until President-elect Joe Biden is sworn in. Since President Trump is banned from nearly all social media platforms due to violations, he released a video statement that the news channels played, stating he doesn't agree with the mob that stormed the Capitol and that violence is not acceptable. Although the statement in itself states the president's position clearly, a lot of news reporters say it came way too late. It should have been given a week ago when it was needed. Key things to keep in mind: the House voted 232 to 197 to impeach Trump 1 week after rioters forced lawmakers to flee from the very chamber in which they cast ballots in during the 4th presidential impeachment in U.S. history. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said that a trial could not be completed ahead of Biden's inauguration, even if it started beforehand, and he wanted Congress and the executive branch to spend the next week focused on facilitating a safe inauguration and an orderly transfer of power. Number 2 is Carlos Andres Perez. On December 4th, 1988, Carlos Andres Perez, also known as Cap and El Gocho, was elected president of Venezuela for the second time, representing the country's strongest political party called Democratic Action. He inherited a state on the verge of bankruptcy, and after a decade of devastating economic crisis, he promised to bring back the golden era of the oil bonanza, which coincided with his first presidency back in the mid-1970s. On March 20th, 1993, Attorney General Ramon Escobar Salom introduced action against Perez for the embezzlement of $250 million belonging to a presidential discretionary fund, or a partida secreta. The president claimed the money was used to support the electoral process in Nicaragua, but during the impeachment process, it was revealed that the money was actually used to hire bodyguards for President Violeta Chamorro. On May 21, 1993, the Supreme Court found Perez guilty, and the following day the Senate voted for the president to be stripped of his immunity. Although El Gocho refused to resign, the National Congress removed him permanently from office on the 31st of August. Number 3, Otto Perez-Molina. The 48th Guatemalan president, Otto Perez, was accused of organizing a scheme where businesses bribed officials to clear their imports through customs at discounted tariffs. Guatemala's Congress stripped President Perez of his immunity from prosecution, thus opening the door for criminal investigation into his alleged leadership of a major customs corruption ring. The La Linea corruption case began on April 16, 2015. But in May of 2015, the chief prosecutor, Thelma Aldana, exposed yet another high-level corruption scandal when they announced the Guatemalan Social Security Institute Board of Directors plotted to award a renal facility service contract to an external company that did not comply with minimal requirements and caused the death of numerous patients. In a press conference, CICIG chief, Colombian prosecutor Ivan Velasquez, reported that during the procedures that were carried out on April 16th, they discovered the president and the vice president were the masterminds of La Linea, and not Juan Carlos Monzon, as it was believed. So in the end, on September 1st, Otto Perez-Molina was impeached and stripped of his immunity, and he resigned September 2nd, and he was in custody on September 3rd. Number 4, Dilma Rousseff. Rousseff was the 36th president of Brazil and the first woman president in their history. The impeachment of the president started on the 2nd of December 2015 and continued through late 2016. She was charged with criminal administrative misconduct and disregard for the federal budget in violation of Article 85, Items 5 and 6 of the Constitution of Brazil and the Fiscal Responsibility Law, Article 36. The petition for her impeachment that was accepted by Eduardo Cunha, which was then president of the Chamber of Deputies, also accused Rousseff for criminal responsibility for failing to act on the scandal at the Brazilian National Petroleum Company called Petrobras, on account of allegations uncovered by the Operation Car Wash investigation, and for failing to distance herself from the suspects in that investigation. Even though Rousseff was president of the Petrobras Board of Directors during the period covered by the investigation, and approved Petrobras's controversial acquisition of the Pasadena refining system, the charges for this were not included in the impeachment. Rousseff was formally impeached on the 17th of April 2016, and on the 12th of May, the Senate voted to suspend Rousseff's powers for the duration of the trial, and Vice President Michel Temer became the acting president. Number 5, Bill Clinton. Probably one of the most famous impeachments in history is that of Bill Clinton, the 42nd President of the United States. It was initiated on October 8, 1998, when the U.S. House of Representatives voted to commence impeachment proceedings against Clinton for high crimes and misdemeanors, specifically against lying under oath and obstruction of justice. The saucy details that led to the impeachment was his sexual relationship with then White House intern Monica Lewinsky, as well as a sexual harassment lawsuit that was filed against the president by Paula Jones. A trial in the Senate began in January 1999, and on February the 12th, Clinton was acquitted on both counts as neither received the necessary two-thirds majority vote of the senators present for conviction and removal from office, and he remained in office for the whole of his second term. The votes went like this: 45 found him guilty, 55 not guilty. As it did not reach the necessary 67 guilty votes, he was acquitted. Well, there you have it for today. Now you know what impeachment actually means. And these are the top 5 most famous impeachment trials that have happened until now. Since we can't ask which one was your favorite as we usually do, we're going to ask you for something different today. Tell us in the comments which impeachment you think was the one that had people most divided. Until next time, stay safe.